Today, I'd like to continue our journey through the book of Joshua as we see the Jewish people now on their journey through the desert, finally getting settled in the land of Canaan after 40 years of struggle. In chapter 11, we see how the northern tribes are conquered in Canaan. The king of Hazor, which is located north of the Sea of Galilee, was the largest city in the Holy Land during the Canaanite period, the city of Hazor. It gets an alliance of tribes together, but Joshua routs them again with a surprise attack. So we see in the book of Joshua the clever planning of Joshua in terms of his strategy. He's always looking to gain an edge over the opponent. Those in the alliance had many horses and chariots, but the Israelites were able to hamstrung their horses and also to burn their chariots. So because of the strategy of destroying what they had, they were able to conquer. And it says there were no survivors. Many times in the book of Joshua and some of the other historical books in this time period, the idea of no survivors and all the women and children were killed and all the older people were killed. Tends to be a bit of an exaggeration. Rarely in practice was that actually the case. Hazor was burned, and all the kings of the cities that had attacked the Israelites were killed. And that would have been kind of normal that those who attacked the leadership was always attacked and destroyed, because you wouldn't want the people to regroup and attack you again. The Israelites took all the livestock and spoil from the cities, but killed all of the people as God had commanded Moses, and Moses had commanded Joshua. So you see the line of authority. God commands Moses, Moses commands Joshua. So again, the circle back to God. At this point, all the Gibeonites had made peace with Israel, and so the Gibeonites, they were spared. Joshua had captured the whole country, but there were pockets of survivors in Gaza, and Gath, and Ashdod. A lot of times when that claim is made that Joshua had conquered the whole country, again, an exaggeration, just like when they say all the people were killed. We see that there were pockets of resistance, different tribes, really throughout the period of the kings and into the period of the kingdom, and then even after that. So this back and forth happened with a number of these tribes, and that's why the tribes were so influential on the Jewish people, and the Jewish people were tempted to adopt many of the customs of the different Canaanite tribes. In chapter 12, there's a listing of all the kings and the towns that were conquered. So you know the towns where they were and the kings. In chapter 13, the land is then divided up among the 12 tribes. Now, some of the Canaanite tribes, as we said, were not dislodged, and certain areas had not been conquered, such as all the districts of the Philistines. So those districts were not conquered at this point. Half of the tribe of Manasseh, as well as the Reubenites and the Gadites, were given the land to the east of the Jordan River. And that was something that was arranged during the time of Moses. So it was something that people were very familiar with. And again, Joshua was just carrying out the plan that Moses had agreed to. The Levites, again, are given no particular land since they will be serving as priests. They were assigned to certain cities and given pasture land for their flocks, but no specific land. So a certain city was called a Levitical city, but there was no large area that was a Levitical area because, again, they were priests and they had to minister as priests. That was their first priority. In chapter 14, Joshua gave Caleb, who is now 85 years old, he gave him Hebron because of his faithfulness to God. Remember early, he was one of the scouts who reported that the Israelites could conquer the enemy, and so he was favored by God and by Moses and by Joshua. The implication from verse 10 is that it took the Israelites 7 years to conquer all the tribes. And again, the 7 years, the 7-year period, whenever we see the number 7, it's kind of the number of perfection. It means a great number, an esteemed number, and it would have taken them a long time to conquer. And again, not all of these tribes were conquered. Chapter 15, the land that's given to Judah is outlined, and we can see that the tribe of Judah is the favorite tribe, and a lot of time is spent on the tribe of Judah, more so than the other tribes. The list of towns most probably is based on an administrative list of the provinces in the southern kingdom. So it would have come from a later time, probably the time of the monarchy, and also the time when the kingdom was split into northern and southern, and so the tribes had to be listed as far as they could administer the lands properly and say this land was in the south, this was in the north, these were the people that were in charge of this particular area. So that history is kind of projected back here to the time of Joshua, when it certainly would not have been enacted as thoroughly as it was later on. Caleb also conquered some additional lands in Debir, and he gave his daughter Aksha in marriage to Othniel. Othniel was the son of Caleb's brother Kenaz, because he had conquered Kirith Sephor, so he was given this special land, kind of a surprise. He had conquered it, so he got that land. Ashka asked her father for more land, and he gave it to her on the day of her marriage. So Caleb had a special spot in his heart for his daughter. His daughter knew that, and he took advantage of that and got the extra land. Judah was given cities in the southern district near Edom, in the foothills, in the mountain regions, and in the desert. And there's also some question here as to where the territory of Benjamin was in the southern kingdom, and if some of these lands that were ascribed to Judah were really lands that were given to Benjamin. The Judahites were not able to drive out the Jebusites who lived in Jerusalem. So again, Jerusalem was not conquered. And later on, it's going to be a source of challenge for David to conquer. And so at this point, we can see that a number of the lands had not been conquered. So as we look back, Joshua was extremely successful. The tribes were able to settle and get really good pieces of land, but not all of the land was under control of Joshua. And the Israelites had to deal with these different tribes. And this is where you're going to get into that tension between should the Israelites follow God and God's covenant, or should they follow maybe some of these other tribes and their gods and goddesses.